Aloha and good morning. I would like to call the Planning and the Economy Committee meeting to order. I would like to welcome the following members who are present in the council chamber. Council members Say and Wire, and I understand Committee Vice Chair Cordero will be coming here shortly. Councilmember Okimoto is excused from today's meeting. Pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92.3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who register to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who register to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to testify following the registered testifiers. For those standing by remotely, please utilize the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate your desire to speak. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at a remote meeting to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, under HRS Section 92.37, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audio-visual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones and welcome Vice Chair Cordero. Moving to agenda item number 1. For action, Resolution 23-192 confirms the appointment of Ms. Joy Kimura to serve on the Planning Commission of the City and County of Honolulu. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed CD1, OCS 2023-00835, to the resolution submitted by myself. For your information, the summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. And for the administration, I'd like to call up the appointee.
Good morning, Chair Kia Aina, Vice Chair Cordero, and members of the Committee on Planning and the Economy. Thank you for taking the time this morning to hear my resolution.
Oh, are you just going to field questions? Did you want to provide any background?
Sure, I can provide a brief background of myself.
Yes, or statement.
I currently work for Hawaii Lesit. It's a labor management partnership between Local 368 and our signatory contractors. And I've been working in the construction industry for about 10 years. But prior to that, I've worked for state and federal government, and as well as I used to own my own business in Japan. So I have a very varied and diverse background. I've also done a lot of volunteer work over the years, and I hope to bring all of this experience and knowledge and this skill set with me to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Kimura, and mahalo for agreeing to serve. Can you share with us why you are interested in serving on the Planning Commission?
I think it's an honor to be nominated to the Planning Commission. And like I mentioned before, I have done a lot of volunteer work throughout the years, and I consider being a part of the Planning Commission as another way to give back to the community. And throughout my volunteer experiences, I've come to know a lot of people from various communities around the island, and I hope that by serving on the Planning Commission, I can address some of the concerns that were made aware to me.
Members, do you have any questions? Vice Chair Cordero.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ms. Kimura. As many have been aware, maybe in the past few years or even decades or so, our commissions have been faced with not being able to meet quorum, pushing back work that the commissions are tasked to do. So I know that they meet maybe twice a month or so. And I know along with the work that you do, plus all your volunteerism, would you be able to meet the amount of meetings required?
If I am confirmed to the Planning Commission, I can guarantee that I will make or attend the meetings as required, as many as possible. I would make it a priority.
Okay, thank you. And what part of the Planning Commission do you feel you are most keen on tackling when joining the Planning Commission? You know, it does oversee a few specific things in concert with the department, and as well as providing us with the approvals before coming to the council. So what part of that aspect are you looking forward to or more keen on working on?
Actually, I'm just really interested in just learning as much as I can about the different issues that come before the Planning Commission. I want to do my due diligence and make sure that whatever decisions are made are done in line with what is the goal of the Oahu General Plan. I also want to make sure that whatever policies or decisions are made, that it's done with the best interests of the community in mind. And I just also want to share that I really believe that if I am on the Planning Commission, I want to make sure that there's, justice within the communities. There are certain communities that I feel that, take a lot of the responsibility for certain projects, and I think we should have more equity across the board.
Oh, thank you. That was great. Thank you. I forgot my last question after that, but thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kimura. You know, you and I have talked about Bill 10, 2022 relating to the land use ordinance. Were you able to take a look at the City Council website's page and the legislative history of the bill thus far?
I did take a look at it, and I have to say that for Bill 10, there are many concerns with that bill. I believe that, first of all, it's very huge. It should be broken down into sections so that it's a little bit easier to understand and digest. I also believe that the changes should be redlined so that the public can understand what were the original, what was the original and what are the changes, and they can compare and be able to understand what exactly is being changed.
As you know, we are on a time frame. My preference is to continue going over the use sections, hopefully in the beginning of next year. But I am reluctant to have the bill go back to the Planning Commission. Do you have a position on that?
At this time, I don't have a position on that because I really believe that I would need to talk to the other commissioners as well as other members to make sure that everything is done in line with the goals. But I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, mahalo for your willingness to serve, and mahalo to the administration for continuing to appoint well-qualified individuals to serve on our Planning Commission. I also want to encourage the administration for future appointments to the Planning Commission that we prioritize filling the seats allocated to a member with experience or expertise in Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices and Native Hawaiian law and climate change and environmental protection, and I commit to helping to get the word out to identify qualified candidates. If there's no other questions, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. Seeing none, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. And is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion.
Mahalo.
Councilmember War.
Sorry, premature. Mahalo, Chair. Is it okay if I ask Director Apuna a couple quick questions?
Sure.
Mahalo, Ms. Kimura, for being here. Morning, Director.
Good morning.
Yeah, super simple and brief, because I just wanted to make sure I understood, given the conversation that came up. So say a bill gets sent over to the commission, and I know they're reviewing it. What's the interface with DPP or the city on the front end, and then the other end in terms of the formatting and the structure, and looking at if bills should be redlined as mentioned or whatnot?
So when a bill is put before the Planning Commission, usually it affects land use ordinance, it'll come to DPP and we will generate a report evaluating the proposal, or if we put it forth ourselves, and basically providing some recommendation to the Planning Commission as far as like formatting to Ramsar, et cetera. I think we would take that into consideration if that's something that would be helpful to the public and the council, that we could incorporate that into a draft. Yeah.
Okay, Mahalo, appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. And then, just for discussion to wrap up, my thoughts, I just wanted to say mahalo again for the nominee, because I do think she's extremely qualified given the breadth of her experience at multiple levels of government and in the community, and just being willing to serve. I think that it means a lot to our community, and will be well served by her her insight. Appreciate her commitment to the general plan, to equity, and also to ensuring that the work product that ends up before the council is put together well, so not just us, but also the community is able to fully digest it and then meaningfully participate. So appreciate all that. Mahalo.
Thank you, Council Member. If there are no further discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-192 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections, reservations? Hearing none, Resolution 23-192 is amended to a CD1. Chair then recommends that Resolution 23-192 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections, reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 2, informational briefing update from the Department of Planning and Permitting on building permit process backlog. Members, for your information, the presentation is in your handouts and available online as Departmental Communication 662. We have for the administration, Director Dawn Takeuchi Apuna from the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. We appreciate this opportunity again to provide an update on the building permit backlog. So first, we would like to thank you, council members, for visiting us last month after we had announced a major, break in our backlog. Oh, sorry. So it was very meaningful to my staff, myself, the department. It means a lot that you guys are there to support us in everything we do. So thank you so much. Okay. So moving on to the status of our backlog. Now, this is the residential, and it looks different than our normal, what we usually share with you. The top table are the data that we normally share with you, and it includes all residential permits, including online instant permits. So again, the pre-screen, it's about 5 days, and we're gonna make that even less. We are transitioning, and we need to do a lot of training in the code review, so it's kind of come up from a couple days to 5 days. The bot went down a couple times too, so we're constantly adjusting. It's not always going to be a smooth ride, but over time we'll get to a very like 1 day potentially, and that should be pretty soon. So again, at the top table, it's all of the residential permits, single family and 2-family, and then a range of other permits. And then the bottom table excludes the instant online permits. And instant online permits, just so that you're aware, it includes the PV battery, solar water heater, some plumbing fixtures and piping replacement, electrical rewiring, split AC, fence, and sidewalk, driveway, and window repair. So there's about 18 online permits. The PV in itself, I think I've mentioned this to you before, it's 60% of our residential permits. It's a very large amount. So by taking that out, which kind of skews the numbers, you can see that everything else, basically 1 and 2 family and alterations, this is a better demonstration of what's happening in our code review. So you're looking at an average about 5 months and 2 weeks in the code review at this time. But we continue to work on that phase because the backlog has shifted to the code review. Like I said, we're doing a lot of in-house training, permit routing, plans reading, GIS, posse, subdivision, residential review in mechanical, electrical, housing, zoning, et cetera, that long list. We've been training staff who were doing, some of them were doing pre-screen, and we've been able to train them, and we have ongoing training so that they can help with the residential code review. So yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm getting a little lost. And then this is the commercial code review, which we spoke about before. They don't have any instant online permits. So this would be a range of different, definitely more complex projects that we look at. And you can see it's a 9 to 10 month average in review in that area. So a lot of the fix for that is in actually hiring more people to do the job. This is a look at our current vacancies for engineers that perform the review. We have, building engineers, mechanical and electrical, and we need to fill vacancies across the board. Okay. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about working in these positions, that they are important positions, and how can we recruit, and we hope to recruit more people to fill these positions. So this table looks at what an engineer in the private sector versus DPP can evaluate. So in the private, obviously we've talked about this before, the salaries are much higher, but we continue to work with HGA and others to see what we can do about the salaries. In private, your projects are driven by, your work is driven by projects, whereas at DPP, you can rest assured that you'll be working regular hours. And in private, you're constantly chasing down new work, while you don't have to worry about that at DPP. There's certainly a flexibility in private, but we know that we can offer 4x10s or telework. In private, and a lot of our engineers who came from private talk about losing sleep over project problems, but at DPP, they sleep well and they can leave their work at work. Private, you're gonna earn about 5 to 10 days of leave per year, but at the city, you can start off after your first year with 21 days sick and 20 days vacation. In private, you don't have stamp liability. You do have stamp liability. At DPP, you do not, although these engineers take their job very seriously for the public good. So we have one new hire in our building, a building engineer, and they shared what their perspective was. DPP provides a positive work environment. There's good team and mentors are always willing to help. They have a satisfactory work-life balance. It's not too stressful, and they were able to handle the tasks at hand, and there's always something new to learn. So this engineer stated the idea of reviewing building plans for conformance with the standard building codes is awesome. To know that your purpose is to help ensure the safety of the proposed work are met is a great feeling. So I hope people apply. We are going through a lot of positive, great changes. So I think it's a great place to work. So please come and come join our team. So with that, that completes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Director, and thank you for all of the good work you've been doing. After last month's hearing, we did appreciate going over there. I think we need to do that more often and just go in the hallways and see some of the other floors that we weren't able to see last month. I will have to say that, almost every time that we're meeting with developers or agents or people who are in the field, I'm always encouraging them. I'm always promoting them to look for qualified candidates to work at DPP.
Thank you.
Members, any questions? Councilmember Wire? Cordero? Councilmember Singh? Oh, this is great. Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for responding to my request with regard to disaggregating the data for the instant online permits. Thank you for disaggregating. Thank you so much. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. Seeing none, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have Angela Young.
Angela, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, and the City Council, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support. Just in support of the commercial process, and of course, I will tell my friends about the engineer vacancies. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I'm going to task you to go out and look for qualified candidates for DPP, okay?
Yeah, actually, my dad is an electrical engineer, and so are my brothers.
Okay.
So they're in Wheaton, they're graduating from college, so I'll tell them about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Clerks, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion. Seeing no discussion, we're going to move on to agenda item number 3, informational briefing, update on the allocation and use of American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds. Members, for your information, the presentation is in your handouts and available online as Mayor's Message 206. We have with us today Managing Director Mike Formby and Executive Assistant Andrew Malahoff. Mahalo nui for joining us today.
Good morning, Committee Chair Kia Aina, Vice Chair Cordero, and committee members, Mike Formby, Managing Director. Andrew Malahoff is going to present the briefing, and then I would like to talk to the council about a discussion that we had with Chair Waters and Vice Chair Kia Aina this week about repurposing federal recovery funds, federal assistance funds for federal hazard pay. And so I'll discuss that with you after he goes through the presentation and take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kia Aina, Vice Chair Cordero, members of the committee, Andrew Malahoff, Executive Assistant, Office of Managing Director. And today I'm just providing an update on the allocation use of the state and local fiscal recovery funds. So today we're just going to talk about the current commitments and a brief update on our review of non-performing projects. So as of August 29th, these are the totals by tranche. In tranche 1, 178 million or 92% has been awarded, and 15 million or 8% remains in tranche 1. In tranche 2, we have 144 million or 75% that's been awarded, and 48 million or 25% of that tranche remaining. So that provides an aggregate total of 321 million that's been awarded, and 63 million or 16% that's remaining. And as we've done historically, this is just a brief overview of the commitments by category. And you may recall that in January, we did advise that we were undertaking a review of all active projects to look for non-performing projects using an objective evaluation criteria. And this is just a restatement of that criteria. And it was basically any project that had no funds encumbered or expended, in other words, zero movement, or projects with a disproportionate cadence of the encumbrance or expenditures. So that would be a project where they anticipated drawing down the funds within 12 months, and say 6 months into that, they have not drawn down, say, 50% of their total award. So we had reviewed 137 active projects, which were reviewed under that objective criteria. Of that, 28 projects were identified as non-performing, and through further conversations with the sponsoring departments, we identified 12 projects that were going to have a downward adjustment in their award amount, and 2 projects to be canceled. At this time, we anticipate that would result in a further return of $8.5 million in FRF funds. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Malhoff. Can you, before I open it to questions on the 2 projects, can you elaborate on the 2 projects and the dollar amount for each?
So the 2 projects, one was from the Department of Land Management, and the dollar value for that project was $500,000. The other project was a Board of Water Supply project, and that project had a value of around $8 million as well.
And tell me a little bit more about the Board of Water Supply project. What was it about?
So the Board of Water Supply, I believe that was their Wilhelmina Rise reservoir replacement project, and they had anticipated a bid of, I believe it was about $8.5 million. And when they went through their first round of solicitations, the bids were coming in significantly higher than what they anticipated. So there wasn't a capacity to award it at that amount. So they've gone back to, value engineer that project, reevaluate it, and that additional time would make it challenging for them to encumber the funds.
Okay, so they understand what's going on. It wasn't because they failed to try.
Correct.
Okay, and then at this juncture, because I know we're going to get a briefing on just the fiscal conditions going into the next budgetary cycle, I'm assuming they're not coming back for ARPA again. They're probably going to go through the normal budgetary process or seek other funds?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, you have any questions? Vice Chair Cordero.
Thank you. Will we be able to determine it in the notes of the mayor's message that we get monthly? Is it going to be on the right side, or where can we determine which projects have been decreased in funding?
That would be that will be reflected in next month's monthly line item report.
Oh, next month. Okay. Would you be able to share that with us today? Just some of the projects?
I'm sorry.
Would you be able to share some of which projects and how much they've decreased today?
I can get that to you in writing.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Wire, any questions?
No, Chair, thank you.
Councilmember Say.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Malahoff. In your funding dashboard, the commitments by categories, the first pie chart is what has been approved. Second pie chart is what has been encumbered. And then the third pie chart reflects what has been expended. The big difference for me is what is encumbered and what is expended. And the topic or the issue is the island infrastructure. Can you explain that to me? When we encumbered a huge amount in that pie chart, and then when we go to expended, we got zero.
Well, what I can share on this reflects a point in time report. So this was as of, I believe, September 6th. took this from the wainuohu.org dashboard. And encumbered funds, when funds are encumbered, they're basically poised for expenditure.
Yes.
So for example, you probably have some contracts that have been awarded, but they have yet to actually draw against those funds. So as the monies actually are expended, you would then see that reflected in the expenditure pie chart.
Okay.
So at some point in time, you should see a pretty large growth in that island infrastructure portion of the expended pie chart.
Okay, so would you say that what we have that's going to be at the end of the fiscal year of this particular federal program will be reflective of what was approved at the beginning? You see the pie chart at the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll trust what you say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cordero.
Thank you. I know that we are still left with a lot of projects that are being worked on, even with 2 being deleted and others with some funding going to be decreased. What is the realistic probability that we're going to have to delete a lot more of the programs that we have here?
You know, I would not want to speculate on the future disposition of approved projects, but I think as Managing Director will discuss, we do need to be judicious moving forward with new projects given some of the other fiscal demands we're facing.
Okay, and has there been any amendments or any slight changes to the criteria that that's passed down from the Department of Treasury that we have to kind of work within the realms of?
They have, you know, they continue to periodically update the rules, and I will just speak very broadly. The Treasury has provided some increased flexibility in the use of funds, but there hasn't been anything that's necessarily been more restrictive.
Okay.
Or anything that would impact our ongoing projects.
Okay, that's good. So increased flexibility broadly, which is generally, I would say, but of course, no extension on timing of expending the funds.
No, there's no indication that those deadlines are going to be adjusted.
Okay, got it. So also, when a project is deemed not viable, what is the timeline that the city administration or the department that the project or program is prescribed to would have to come to the council for reprogramming or redirecting?
So at this time, it's, you know, for any project that has an adjustment made to it, those funds are simply being remitted back to the balance of our FRF monies. And I think any reprogramming of those for other expenditures would have to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I do recall maybe before summertime when we were talking about non-viable projects, when we started talking about that the discussion would be had with the council member of the district that maybe if the program was coming from Appendix A or is related to a specific council district, because I know that others don't touch the whole island too. So, so that discussion is not going to be happening anymore?
You know, I think it will, again, depend on the individual projects and how we prioritize the balance of the FRF funds, again, taking into consideration the other financial demands we're facing, which I think Managing Director Formby will speak to.
Okay, but I guess now, like maybe a few months later, half a year after that, the first course of action would just be put it back into the balance of the FRF funds then. And okay, understood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No other questions. Managing Director?
Thank you, Committee Chair. Just by way of history, and I'm a little bit for the public that may be watching, if not live in the future, ARPA was signed into law in March of 2021. And the state and local fiscal recovery funds that were given to the city and county of Honolulu were roughly $386 million in 2 tranches. And when you look at the law says that it was to keep first responders, frontline health workers, and other providers of vital services safely on the job. And as you know, at the City and County of Honolulu, our workers are predominantly essential workers responsible for keeping our systems operating 24/7. And so in recognition of the claims that have been made and are going to be made for hazard pay is an approved item under the state and local fiscal recovery funds. And I think you know that there's also an opportunity for state and counties to recover for economic losses. And when we did the calculation at the very beginning, when we got our first tranche, before we even had the second tranche, we knew that following U.S. Treasury guidelines, the City and County of Honolulu essentially could have taken the entire allotment to the city, $386 million, as revenue replacement. But we chose not to do that. Working with the council, we went out and came up with the projects that are in the two tranches, and the City Council's project list was in Appendix A. Now that Council has expressed a policy preference for using fiscal recovery funds for hazard pay, we're having to balance the priorities. And when we look at settlements that have already been entered into or arbitration results that have come out, we're able to get some forecast on the potential demand. And the potential demand is significant. So what we're doing now, if you recall a discussion maybe 3 or 4 months ago, the federal government talked to the states and the municipalities about clawing back fiscal recovery funds. And I don't like that phrase, clawing back, because I think it implied at the federal level that they were going to take the money back and use it for other purposes. What I like to say we're doing is we're reallocating funds for an approved purpose. It is an approved purpose to use these fiscal recovery funds for hazard pay. And what we want to do is recover as much as we can so that we have a pot of money to offset other expenses in the fiscal year 24 budget, and then have an appropriation for hazard pay once we enter into discussions with the different unions and bargaining units. So it's a discussion that we're happy to have one-on-one with each council member. We don't want to discuss in detail numbers publicly because we haven't entered into settlement negotiations yet. And we do have defenses and the unions have claims. And so we need to go through that process. But I would tell you that my goal, just ballpark, would be to recover as much as $75 million and up of the $386 million, as much as possible. I really believe it's going to be necessary. I think the council and the administration are looking at a very tough fiscal year 24 budget, given other projected increases. And so we need to prioritize where these monies go. And hazard pay is consistent with the initial stated purpose of the recovery funds. So I offer that for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And also meet with you one-on-one.
Members, any questions? Councilmember Say? Any questions? I know we can't talk dollar amounts here, but I'm just looking at the remaining funds, right? So you, 8.5 million has been returned and there's 63 remaining, right? So is that the universe of funds that could potentially, we're looking at potentially to being utilized for hazard pay?
I don't believe so. What we're also doing is looking at projects and trying to balance the utility of the original allocation with the utility of a hazard pay allocation. So it may be if we look at a project and it hasn't progressed far enough along that it would be, a damage, in other words, that we would lose money, I would come to the council and suggest that the council consider reallocation of agenda projects so that we could repurpose it to hazard pay. So it's not just what's unused, what's been canceled.
It could be encumbered.
It could, well, it could be, but I doubt it. I just think there are enough projects out there that have been allocated and are making progress. They haven't been pulled back yet, but potentially they could be.
Okay. So basically, with the pie charts, it could be when you say expended, the funds have been allocated, but the project is in the implementation stage, right?
Correct.
So, so there's no specific pot basically all of the pots should be looked at with the criteria that Mr. Malahoff had outlined.
That's correct, and we're happy it's a process, and we're happy to brief council as we go through that process. Definitely for the appendix projects, which are the council projects, you have to have a say in that. We would not look at a project that we're implementing that you allocated money to and cut that without you being a part of that process. So it will be a discussion, but I think right now, if Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, if we just took the numbers that are clearly available, we're right around 71 million. And my personal preference is that we try to get this up near 100 million.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope that the council members will sit down one-on-one, especially the budget chair. And so thank you so much for the information.
Thank you, I appreciate the time.
Any of you have questions? No questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. Seeing none, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have Angela Young.
Angela, please proceed.
Okay. Angela Melody Young testifying in strong support of the American Rescue Plan Act and the CARES Act. And it looks like if we go to One Oahu, it will tell us about the plan and the Honolulu's initial recovery plan. And if we open up the packet, it's 23 pages, and then there are subject matters of focus that the city's goals are in alignment with the federal expenditure categories. So public health, negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, revenue replacement, and administrative. So I really look forward to some of the ways that the funds will help the community. And I think the White House.gov mentioned something about transportation and education as a focus also.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Clerk, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion. If there is no further discussion, this meeting is adjourned.